In our last discussion about the family, we examined the meaning and the various types of families that exist. Today, I want us to further our discussion on the family by looking at the functions and features of modern families. This topic is important because, as we noted at the introduction, all social institutions perform specific functions, and that is why they remain important to societies. The family, as we noted earlier, is considered as one of the oldest and most important of all the social institutions. Perhaps its importance lies in the functions or the roles that it plays in society. And that is why it is of paramount importance that we look at the functions or the roles the families play in society. But we also have to recognize the fact that families have evolved over time, and therefore the kind of families that we have today might not be similar in all respects to those families that we had previously. And that is why a discussion on the features of modern families becomes important. That understanding is necessary given the fact that we are living in times in which families are facing a lot of challenges. There are a lot of instabilities in our families, and perhaps we want to look at whether some of the challenges that we find in families are more to do with the characteristics or features that our modern families have. One of the most important functions of the family is reproduction. We need to notice that in every society, the family, and for that matter, marriage, is the socially approved institution that performs the function of reproduction. For that matter, reproduction becomes an important function of the family. Why is reproduction important? Reproduction is important because it plays the role of replacement. We need to notice that from time to time, some members of society die while others migrate to other places. For that purpose, there is need for new members to be born so as to replace those that have migrated to other places or those that have died. Therefore, societies from time to time through the family develop structures and systems that helps in the performance of the reproductive function of the family. In essence, therefore, societies through the family and marriage defines who is eligible to marry and bear children. We need to notice that not everybody can marry, because marriage, and by extension, being a parent, has certain responsibilities that people are bestowed on. And in that case, therefore, society decides who is eligible to marry, and also society decides the number of children that it considers adequate per family. Again, this is based on the population trends. If there are fears that population is declining badly, the society would encourage families to have more children. Again, if it is considered that there is high population growth to the extent that it may undermine society's ability to access vital resources for its survival, again at that stage, the society will encourage its members to have fewer children, so that from time to time, it is the role of society to determine how many children are adequate from time to time based on population growth and the availability of natural resources. So reproduction is a key function in our families. Unless it is by a couple's choice not to have children, otherwise, one of the major reasons as to why we have instability in our marriages is because of inability of either one or both of the spouses not to father or get a child. So issues of infertility are highly looked at in society. Societies encourage cases where a woman is unable to give birth or rather conceive because of infertility. Societies encourage such families to embrace polygamy. And cases where it is the man that's unable to make a woman conceive, again, societies encourage such women to find alternative means of getting children. This is because having children is a key to the survival of society and the continuity of any given society. Another important function of the family is that one of sexual regulation. All societies regulate the sexual activities of their members, and this is achieved through the adoption of norms that we call incest taboo. Incest taboo is believed to be universally practiced, that is, it exists in all societies. This norm prohibits sexual relations or marriage between certain members of society, especially blood relatives. Sexual relation by family members is supposed to protect the principle of legitimacy, which emphasizes both the social and legal recognition of the father. What it means here is that a child should not only be biologically or scientifically proved to belong to a given couple, but again, the child must be a product of a sexual relationship that is permitted in society. And that is what brings what we call the sexual legitimacy, rather the social legitimacy. For instance, if, say, a child is obtained from a sexual relationship that involves, for instance, a biological brother and a biological sister, though that child can scientifically be proved to belong to the two, socially there would be no recognition because of the fact that sexual union between blood relatives is prohibited in society through the incest taboo. And therefore, while such a child might have the legal legitimacy, the same child would lack the social legitimacy. And in the process, the child would face a lot of social stigma and discrimination in society. So that when you talk about, again, the regulation of sexual behavior, it is not just concerned with the sexual intercourse. It also looks into other behaviors that are considered sexual, such as hugging each other, kissing each other, caressing, as well as attitudes and values that members of society have towards sex. In most communities or most societies, sexual permissiveness is not encouraged. Individuals are encouraged to uphold high values towards sexual activities and to treat sex as sacred and only be practiced among individuals that are not only consenting, but those that have also been permitted culturally to engage in such form of sexual unions. So the regulation of sexual activities is quite important because society must be morally upright and must at all times treat sex as an important function of reproduction, not for purposes of excitement or entertainment. Socialization is yet another important function of the family. By socialization, we mean the process by which individual members of society acquires behaviors, beliefs, standards, and motives that are of value, and is achieved by means of a family and the actual group to which an individual belongs. For instance, when we are young, there are certain values that are implanted in us and which we live with. As we become adults, again, there are certain values that are implanted in us. Again, when we become elderly, it's also expected of us to practice certain values. So at all times, people are taught on how well to fit in society. Take the case of a girl, for instance, a growing girl. As a girl, one is taught on how to be a daughter, how to be a sister, how to be a friend, how to be a wife, and how to be a mother. Again, a person is taught the specific roles, both core roles, primary and secondary roles, that go with these statuses. Again, if you're a boy, you're also taught to be a son, to be a brother, to be a friend, to be a husband, to be a father. Again, the accompanying roles of each statuses, again, is people are taught. So that the expectation is that a person that is brought up is one that can morally, socially, and in all other aspects fit in any given social setting. Is the family that also ensures that people are adequately supported so that they grow and become important members of society. We need to be taught the cultural beliefs, life skills, the values, and the kind of responsibility that we need to hold as we pass from one stage to another. So it's the outcome of the socialization process within the family that becomes important in the development and maturity of an individual, so that we become adults not because of age, but because of ability to socially fit in any given setting and also to carry out the roles that society assigns to us from time to time. So being elderly, being an adult, being adolescents are not merely biological ages, but they are also role expectations that from time to time we are required to display. There are certain characters, there are certain skills, there are certain understanding, there are certain values, there are certain norms that we are required to observe from time to time. And all this is only possible through the process of socialization, which the family is the leading and most important institution that carries out such a role. Economic support or provision is also a function of the family. This function is achieved through division of labor, which is based on sex and age. At the family setting, there are certain roles that have been assigned to male members, while others to female members. Again, there are certain roles or activities that are done by younger people, others by adults, while others are done by the elderly. Members of society, rather of the family, are normally brought up with understanding that they need to work hard for the benefit of the entire family, and also they need to cooperate, that is, work in cooperative manner to produce what the family needs for survival. All societies encourage the norm of what we call intergenerational reciprocity, whereby parents or adults are encouraged to take care of the younger children, and the young, once they become of age, they'll take care of their elderly parents and relatives. So that at all time, the expectation is that members of the family must participate in productive exercises, so that through economic provision, people are able to access essential needs. That is, they need to have adequate food, decent shelter, adequate clothing, being able to attend schooling, and also access quality medical care. These functions or these services cannot possibly be achieved unless members of the family play their rightful role in the economic provision of the family. Emotional support also remains one of the most essential functions of the family. That is, it is the role of the family to guide their members in terms of their psychological development. And this one is achieved through the provision of a loving and caring environment. The family also acts as a social insurance against old age and also during sicknesses. That is, when people become aged or they are incapacitated in one way or the other, it is members of the family that need to support them, both economically, socially, and even psychologically. Again, in terms of sicknesses, provision of care and support must also come from members of the family. Otherwise, no one from outside would be in a position to help a member of the family if his or her own family members are not taking an active role. Family members also offer support and comfort to members who are bereaved or recovering from traumatizing events. Furthermore, it's also the role of the family to protect its members against physical attacks, ridicule, and other degrading treatment. While some people prefer doing things alone, most of the people need others to care for them, show affection, share joys and sorrows, and also give support in times of need, so that provision of an emotional support becomes an important aspect of the family. This is because there are times where we need to feel a sense of belonging, where we need to receive counseling, where we need to be supported in order to heal emotionally. And this is where the family becomes most critical. Social placement is also a function of the family. By placement, we mean the way a child's history or lineage can be traced. And is the idea that children inherit the social identity of their parents at birth. In that sense, parents confer their own social identity to the children. They include race, ethnicity, religion, and social class. These are things or statuses that a child inherits at birth. Now, these statuses could be ascribed statuses so that any child is able to say, my parent belong to this religion, and therefore this is my religion. My parents belong to this ethnic group or race, and therefore I belong to that race. However, certain statuses might change as a child grows and becomes an adult. Things such as religion, once a child becomes an adult, they can choose which religious organization to affiliate to. Other things such as economic status might also change. For instance, a child may be born in a poor family, but through hard work, a child changes his status and his status completely becomes different. And even sometimes they may go ahead and even change the economic status of their parents. But even more important is the fact that families bequeath to their members patterns of descent and inheritance rights. It is on this basis of social placement that we have had cases of mothers taking to court people whom they perceive to be the fathers of their children and who, instead of accepting, have refused. The battle about the identity of the father to the child is based on the family function of social placement, because at each time, a child needs to be recognized in terms of his ethnicity and in terms of his parentage. They all become important elements and social definitions of a child. Families are also important in the adaptation of their children. This is because families are able to recognize changes that are happening in society and also being able to understand what is going on even in their new environments. Because of this, they are able to enable children understand their social environment and help them cope with the challenges and also utilize opportunities that could be available in such areas. Therefore, the adaptive function enables families to adjust to new demands and cope with change. Family life can exhibit openness to novel ideas of living and also thinking that have not developed in other spheres of life. In other words, any change that occurs in society, the moment a family takes lead and embraces it, the same can easily be accepted and embraced by other members, especially the children. Otherwise, any resistance shown by members of the family, especially adults, is likely to be copied or imitated by those family members that are young. So, in terms of direction, families become so much important in providing direction to the younger members of the family. And in that sense, they are able to adapt to new changes and they are able to understand and utilize resources, both social and economic resources that exist within their environment, and also cope with certain changes that may occur within their social environment. Let's now examine some of the features of modern families. One of the features or characteristics of modern family is the fact that they are philocentric. A family is philocentric when it tends to pay too much attention to the children, and children tend to dominate the scene, and the wishes of the children determine the approaches adopted by their families. These families are characterized also by minimal physical punishment to the children, and they also have children that are not only demanding but are also impatient in terms of their requests. Children, again, in philocentric families also tend to be egocentric and individualistic. They think so much inwardly and focus more on issues that concern them other than those that concern the entire family membership. These children, therefore, they play a leading role in the choice of schools they want to attend, clothes they want to wear, and even the types of foods they want to take. Parents sometimes succumb into the demands and manipulation of the children in a philocentric family. So that most of the families that we find today, they are this way, and in the process, most of the decisions that the family take revolve around their demands and their requests. Children have a greater role to play, and sometimes they impose their demands and positions on the kinds of decisions their families make. One other important feature of modern families is the small size. That is, modern families tend to be small in size compared to traditional families. By small, we mean these families, they tend to have fewer number of children compared to what used to happen. For instance, in the past, a family could have as many as 10 children. The number has drastically reduced to an average of 3. Why do these families prefer fewer children? Part of the reason for their preference of fewer children is to do with the high cost of childcare. Indeed, we need to notice that the cost of schooling is quite high, the cost of medical care is quite high, and also the needs of children in modern times are quite diverse compared to what used to exist in the traditional families. Again, the provision of basic needs is also quite cumbersome. It is not unlike the past where extended families existed was quite common, and therefore the role of childcare and child upbringing was a responsibility of the entire community. These days, much of childcare and child rearing is bestowed on the family, and especially nuclear family. So most people that prefer fewer families, therefore, rather cite the high cost of childcare as part of the reason why they prefer to have fewer children. One other factor that is also leading to modern families having fewer children is the fact that women and men in modern times tend to marry fairly late. This is because they spend considerable amount of time in school, and by the time they are through with school and establish their families, most of them are either in their late 20s or in their 30s, which that phenomena reduces the period with the reproductive period of both men and women. And therefore, women achieve their menopause when they still have quite fewer number of children. Again, there are also some families that also prefer being childless, and they go as far as engaging or embracing practices that permit them or that allow them not to have children, including sterilization. Again, the availability of reliable contraception and institutionalized elder care has also made childlessness an option for some people. So that modern families, the case is not only one in which the number of children are fewer, but there are also cases where some couples completely decide not to have children because they think that children is a hindrance to their personal freedom. So they would rather be without families, other children, other than having one. And all these are contributing to a scenario where modern families are having fewer children and therefore small-sized families. One other important factor here again that is also conspicuous with modern families is that one of selective role playing. It should be noted that traditional families assumed so many roles, especially in the area of child care, elder care, and even care of persons with disability. That is not the case with what we find with our modern families. So that some of the functions that were traditionally performed by families are these days being undertaken by specialized agencies such as hospitals, nursing homes, schools, and even non-governmental organizations. So that elder care, which traditionally was the sole responsibility of families, is these days being assumed by institutional homes, especially the ones that we call homes for the elderly. Again, orphans that were also taken care of the families, again, are increasingly being absorbed into institutional homes, the one that we normally refer to children homes. There are also a lot of non-government organizations that have also been formed and established to take care of persons with disability. In essence, therefore, a lot of activities, a lot of roles that were assumed by traditional families are these days not being undertaken by these families, and instead they are being transferred to other modern institutions. Schools are also taking care of a considerable number of children from as young as 2 years under the program that we call the baby care. This was not the case traditionally. So that families today, they have remained with very few roles. They are now playing very few roles. And the roles they play are those that enable them to pursue other endeavors in life, such as engagement in wage employment. The other thing that we also need to notice is that, unlike before, where production was family based, a lot of activities were being done at family level, farming, cooking, and other things. Again, these days, quite a lot of work is being done by other institutions, so that people are increasingly consuming food that is cooked in hotels, food that is produced or manufactured in industries instead of preparing them at home. So again, this is also an important feature that we find with modern families, which initially was not present in the traditional families. The last feature of modern families that we want to discuss here is the one we call egalitarianism. That is, egalitarianism is a philosophical perspective that emphasizes equality and equal treatment across gender, religion, economic status, and even political beliefs. So that, unlike traditional societies where much of the decisions was based on male members of the family and adults, this in modern families, decisions are made in a participatory manner. Women, men, children, and even in some cases, government institutions are involved in making decisions that affect the family. So that the dominance that that males were known for when it comes to family decision matters, it is no longer there. Families are increasingly embracing democratic and participatory means of decision making, so that decisions such as selling a family property, which schools children go, what kind of economic activities people engage in, are largely these days being made collectively rather than individually, as is the case before. Again, in modern families, we have less parental control on whom to marry and whom to consider as a sexual partner compared to what used to be there before. Previously, it was possible for parents to completely reject a partner that their son or their daughter has presented to them, and they would completely reject and insist that the son or the daughter should not marry the person, and instead they would actively engage in the selection of the type of a person that their children marry. That is not what we have these days. Again, husband does not dictate things to the wife, but rather involves her in decision making. This is unlike before, where the husband actually dominated and gave instructions to other family members in terms of what needs to be done. So egalitarianism is becoming quite common in most families, and this remains one of the most important features of modern families.